do that. I mean, there is no sitting on the sidelines. There is no, you have to, if you're out there, you're looking for a home, you find one you really like, you cannot think about it because it is going to fly off the market.
Yeah.
That's been my experience in the last, I want to say even 2 months. It's one of those markets.
I will tell you, every buyer that we are cooperating with or we are working with to support on their transaction, we are finding ourselves in a situation where their deals come together in a hurry, right? And what I mean by that is, they're kicking the tires, they're hanging around, they're looking at listings. We check in with everybody almost every week just to see how their shopping is going. Have a
Right.
little conversation about what's important to them in the house hunt, right? Because you can become very frustrated when you're not finding inventory and forget that you want to turn around and have a Memorial Day barbecue and have control over it, or you want to turn around and get a dog and your landlord says no. And, when you own your own house, you can do that, or whatever the case is. Talk about your motivation. But, that can go on for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks. And then all of a sudden it's hot for 3 days and the deal is done.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm finding is buyers out there that find a house that they really like, they are aggressively going for that house, and it's multiple offers. I mean, we were in the PLN with this condo. We weren't even officially on the market. I had people throwing offers at us for list plus.
Well, there you go. Then apparently you
Yeah.
won't need marketing flyers for that.
I was going to say, Dylan, that flyer you spent 4 hours on yesterday?
Stop.
Uh,
Stop.
that's all right. Well, we still have the horse farm on the market.
Talk a little bit
And
about the horse farm.
hey, man, the horse farm is awesome. I actually love driving out to Princeton, which is in Bureau County, about an hour and 20 minutes from Naperville. It's a great ride, and you feel like you're in a different part of the world when you're on this farm. There's Appaloosa horses running around everywhere. And, here, let me show you. Check this out. You ready for this?
You got to give the quick video version for the people on the podcast.
Yeah, so we're looking at a video right now of Appaloosa
of the horses and the farmhouse and the barn and all that stuff. I mean, like it's a working horse farm. It's a piece of property that the neighbors represent the sellers on, and it's kind of sharp to look at from an overview standpoint. Tell me a little bit. I'm more curious, Larry, as we talk to people who are on the radio listening to us about how you recruit the technology for these fantastic drone shots. Who does that for you?
Yeah, well, we have several photographers that we work with. This particular person was right in the area. He's out of Peoria, which is very close to Princeton. And for those of you that are watching us on Facebook at the Real Estate Radio Show podcast or on 820 AM, the video that you just watched is a portion of that farm. That farm is 151 acres of prime hunting, and it's a great horse farm too. Now, I should add that the horses don't come with the sale. They're still managing the horses, and everything's negotiable, as we know, right? But
sure.
yeah, that's on the market for 1.3 million. And we have some interest. We have somebody that is interested now, but as is the case, a lot of times he has to sell his 117-acre farm, which is all leased out. So, that's good news. And that's a little different kind of sale. When you're selling a horse farm, 151 acres, you're marketing it differently. We have probably about 30 ads going in papers all throughout the Midwest. We have, we're on a website which has about 72% of the viewing market on the internet in terms of horse properties. It's called horseproperties.net. And so it's just a little different type of networking and advertising when you're selling a property like that.
So, Larry, let me ask you this. Let's talk a little bit about this idea that, this property is very unique. And obviously, I think there's probably a limited audience in Chicago proper of people who are interested in a horse farm most of the way to Peoria. However, I think that I'd be interested, especially after looking at the drone footage, to talk about like what are the similarities in representing a property like that versus this condo that you're representing in terms of, finding the right buyer, negotiating the deal, making sure that the client gets taken care of, up to your professional standards, up to the way you do things. There's got to be similarities.
Well, there are. I mean, when you're talking about selling a property, whether it's a condo, a 3-bedroom condo, or a 6,000 square foot, $2.5 million property in Naperville or Winnetka, or a horse farm in Princeton, right? The way you're going to do it, the machinations of the way you're going to get it out there is the same. You're going to use the internet. You're going to use great media deliverables. You're going to network with agents that sell these type of properties. And so that's all the same, but the way you do it is going to be different. Like, for instance, I'm not going to market this 151-acre horse and hunting paradise to the same person that I would market the condo or single family home to. Because really what people are doing with the horse farm is, and that's kind of what we were getting across with that video, they're buying a lifestyle, right? They're not,
sure.
they're not buying, a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath house in the school district they want to be in. They are buying a lifestyle. And I got to tell you, it's a lot of work. I see how much work these guys do running that horse farm, and they have 4 geldings right now that are just about to give birth. So there's several babies coming along too. And let me tell you something, those babies aren't cheap.
I would imagine that much like the human babies, they ain't cheap.
They're not cheap. And yeah, so the horses aren't included in the sale, but like we said, everything's negotiable. We're on the market for 1.3 million. And by the way, if any brokers or agents are listening out there, if you guys ever want to hop on and tell us about a listing out there that you're excited about, give us a call. You can reach us. Dylan, what's the number over there?
The best number to reach me is 630-708-7088. Again, 630-708-7088. You can text me there anytime.
Yeah. And if you guys, like I said, if you have a listing that you want to highlight, give us a call. You can call us at the station as well, which is 773-763. What was that? 9278?
9278.
Give us a call, guys, because we'd love to promote your listings as well. I mean, I'm a realtor, but at the same time, I want to help anybody out there get their stuff out there and see if we can help them as well. So yeah, if anybody wants a horse farm, just give me a call, 630-921-0611, and I'll sell you a horse farm. It's easy, really. You can do it.
I bet when you signed up for your real estate license, you never thought those words would come out of your mouth. I'll sell
horse
you
farm.
a horse farm.
Well, listen, you never know where the business is coming from, right?
Exactly. All right,
Yeah.
Larry, before we jump into something else, we probably should take a break. And
Let's
we
do
want to
it.
thank everybody for joining us on the Real Estate Radio Show. And if you need to call us, please do at 773-763-9278. We'll catch you on the other side of this short break.
All right.
Real Estate Radio, Saturdays at 9 a.m., hosted by the real estate therapist Larry Shakman, a top producing real estate broker, author, CEO, and founder of TrustedAgentUSA.com. Top performing agents for 2% commission, saving you thousands when you sell, buy, or invest. Real Estate Radio, the ultimate real estate radio experience. Get insider tips from experts throughout the real estate industry. Streaming live on Facebook at WCPT 820. Trusted Agent USA, Illinois, license number 475-145-795. Welcome back to Real Estate Radio, sponsored in part by TrustedAgentUSA.com, the ultimate real estate matchmaker, saving you thousands. Now, back to Larry, the real estate therapist.
Hey, welcome
All
back
right.
to the Real Estate Radio Show podcast. This is Dylan Kramer. I'm here with Larry Shakman, who is not live in the studio, but is live on the air with us. So, Larry, how are you?
We are doing great and happy everybody's joining us this morning. Again, if you want to call in, talk a little real estate, 773-763-9278. Thank you. And we'll talk real estate. Dylan, check this out. What do you think? Where do you think the counties are that are losing nationally or locally that are losing the most amount of people per year? That great migration everybody talks about.
I'm going to just tell you, Larry, that's and I mean nothing political by this, but I would tell you that they're the Democratic cities in the north. So it's Detroit, it's Chicago, it's Philly, it's Pittsburgh, that sort of thing.
Well, you're kind of right. So the number one county that is losing more residents than gaining is Los Angeles County, and they lost 100,000 residents.
California is a quirky animal, but I know a lot of people have left there for Texas.
We're going to get into that in a second. That's a really good observation you made. So Los Angeles County is the number one county in terms of people moving out of the county. The number two county is near and dear to both of our hearts, and that's Cook County.
Sure.
Is the number two. And where do you think all these people are moving?
They're moving to Texas. They're moving to Tennessee. They're moving to Florida.
2 out of 3. So yes, they're moving to Texas, they're moving to Florida, and they're moving to Arizona. Those are the top 3 places.
Los Angeles people, I can see them moving to Arizona for sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. So those are the top 3. And people that are migrating from Cook County, but still staying locally, what they're doing and what this recent survey showed is they are moving to more rural areas where they could get more for their money and a little less hectic lifestyle. So, those stats kind of intrigued me because we kind of always thought that, right? That we're losing some people here in Cook County.
Well, for sure. And, the thing is, Larry, that, like we've talked about, life drives real estate, right? And so if you make the lifestyle decision, look, I've lived in the city. I don't currently. I think there's a lot of value to living in the city, but living in this city can be both exhausting, right? Whether it's, you got to park your car all the time, and you're even to run your Saturday morning errands, you're in and out of parking lots, you're finding parking spaces. You're like, I don't even know if I want to go to my dry cleaners today, or do I have to ride a bike, or whatever the case is. Just the day-to-day mechanics of living in the city can be challenging. And then the second thing is, it can be expensive. I mean, there's just a bunch of nickel and dime expenses associated with living in the city, whether that's, again, back to parking spaces, or, your groceries are a little more expensive, or, and all of this is because it's in the city and it's accessible, and, the real estate's more expensive. I get all of that. But the thing is that sometimes people just decide, you know what, I want to pull up to 4 strip malls on my Saturday morning errands, right? I want to go to the dry cleaners. I want to go to the, florist. I'm going to go pick up this other thing, right? Whatever it is. And so people make those lifestyle decisions without even conversations around the politics of it. And I think that, one of the things then is you also, is that expense starts to add up. And this goes back to one of the conversations I had last week on the show that you were not a part of, but I think it's worth visiting on a little bit. And that was Mayor Johnson's increase in the transfer tax, right? And so
which failed,
doing anything more than saying, I think that's an ill-advised decision that adds extra expense to living in the city proper. Lots of places, California especially, have made political decisions financially, right? Whether that, one of the things in California, and this, is if you buy a piece of property, it gets assessed, and then you're kind of locked in from a property tax standpoint. And so your taxes can't go up, and that's great for you as the individual consumer, but it may not be so great 20 years from now if you continue to own that particular piece of property. And then they have to raise taxes everywhere else because they can't raise your property taxes, and they need money to fund whatever, their pension, their road infrastructure, right, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just these decisions that get layered one on top of the other that have people go, you know what, I'm gonna head for the exits, and the exits are in Arizona and Texas and Florida.
Yeah, and I think what you said is true. People want to get away from that hectic lifestyle, as well as the fact that it's more expensive to live in the city. Having said all that, I helped a buyer recently purchase a gorgeous just an absolutely gorgeous condo in North Point Tower or
Right.
Harbor Point Tower. $1.5 million condo, completely smart condo. You can do anything in your condo from your,
Nice.
right off your cell phone. And I will tell you, the lifestyle down there is amazing. You're within a walk from everywhere. You're looking straight across at Navy Pier. You're right directly across from the yacht club. And it's a real buzz about it. It's a great, great lifestyle.
I think that there's a lot to that, Larry. One of the things, my brother, who actually oddly a few years ago moved to Tennessee, was living here for probably 5 years. His wife moves for her employment. They've lived in New York, they lived in LA, they've lived here, they live in Nashville. And so periodically they switch cities. And so they were here for a few years, and they were living at, I think it was roughly 400 North LaSalle. I don't know if that's a specific address of the building, might have been 440. But anyway, literally high rise, 40th floor, view of the lake, right? They lived in a 2-bedroom place. It might have been 1,100 square feet. It wasn't huge, but it wasn't small for down there either. But their deal was very largely like they would get up in the morning and go about their routine. And then about 8 a.m., they would take the elevator down. They would both go separately. He'd go 2 blocks and she'd go, 4 buildings over to her office, go up the elevator 35 floors, work a day, come back. And it was, they had a car that they were paying for parking for in that building. They put 1,200 miles on that car one year. 100 miles per month. I mean, can you imagine? And it's because you can walk everywhere. So there's absolute value in the city lifestyle. And even though some of those things that we just discussed can be really inconvenient, lots of them are super convenient.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great lifestyle. It is more expensive, but there's something to say for the views and just everything around you and just the buzz of the city.
You're right, Larry. And we've got a call from Steve who wants to talk about the Gold Coast communities and home pricing, which seems right in line with the topic at hand. So, Steve, how are you today?
A larger issue, and that is that there's a lot of really good research out there with regard to this notion that we have moved away from this idea of a city center, be it New York, Chicago, anywhere. For a century, we built infrastructure, we built transportation, we built everything with the idea that a lot of people come downtown where they do work, and then from there on in, they radiate outward, whether it's in the city to go back to their apartments or condos or out to the suburbs. But in the wake of the pandemic, and this started before the pandemic, people are no longer finding it necessary to work downtown. Many major corporations don't want to pay the exorbitant amounts of money it costs to have offices when people can work from home. And people don't want to come into the office. And this is only going to become more and more acute. And that housing that you're talking about, a lot of it was developed in response to the need for people to be there. But now, we've created this sort of tidal wave where a lot of the properties you're talking about that are on the other side of the river or near the river in Chicago are neighborhoods where people don't want to be. People want to be in Old Town and Lincoln Park, and the city is pushing outward. And you can get a walk-up for the price that you used to have to pay for one of these very nice condos in a high-rise. But you were paying because it was near work, and it was near what was going on. But the reality is that there isn't that much going on there anymore compared to what it used to be. I mean, Michigan Avenue is a shadow of its former self. And as I said, the shopping areas and so forth, Southport Corridor and Clybourne, and now we have the South Loop. And so this idea that, people need to be there because there's so much going on, I would argue that that's no longer the case, that it's moved outward. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence that shows there's a lot more crime in that downtown area than there used to be pre-pandemic.
Yeah. Steve, I have to tell you that you really nailed it, because the downtown areas are going to go through a they're going to find themselves again because, like you noted, a lot of these big companies that typically had 20 to 50,000 square feet of office space no longer have that. A lot of their employees are now working from home. So they have to kind of reinvent themselves, a lot of these buildings. And that's all across the country, whether you're in downtown Boston, Chicago, LA, wherever you are, you're going to see a lot of this happening. So I think you pretty much hit it right on the head.
I think Steve raised a good point. I want to thank Steve for the call. The thing that I think, Larry, is really relevant, and to your point, is, you know what, things always go through transition, and so it's been a long winter, but I was able to go downtown last year. We had a couple of events, and they were, one Wednesday night I was down by the Riverwalk, and there've got to
Right.
be 30,000 people milling around between the Riverwalk, the
Yeah.
restaurant district, and just the area down there in the streets. And I had a chance to spend a few evenings down there, and so I would argue that although there is a question from a corporate level of, is that real estate worth it? I also would argue that, lots of companies are going, you know what, we need people back in the office. We need the collaboration, we need the management, we need the camaraderie, we need some of those things. And so they're not necessarily forcing people back to the office for a 5-day week like before the pandemic. But I think we're already on to the second wave where the rethought office is going to be part of the downtown equation. And then how does residential real estate tie to it? And I'm
Yeah.
sure that there's a lot of value in some of the outer neighborhoods, but there's always going to be a subset of people that want to live in the heart of the action that you just described.
Yeah, and I think both you guys really hit it on the head because we're all going to be adapting with the major metropolitan areas, downtown areas, as they change and morph into whatever they're going to be.
Nice, man.
So,
What
yeah.
else you want to talk about today, Larry? We got 15 minutes left here on the Real Estate Radio Show. And if you want to talk real estate with us like Steve did, don't hesitate to give us a call at 773-763-9278. We're happy to talk about all topics real estate and mortgage financing related. What do you got, Larry?
Well,
I know you have the subject sheet.
well, no, listen, what's ever on your mind is on my mind. You let me know. No, well, one thing, new home sales are up almost 6%, about 5.9% year over year. That's a good thing to fill that gap of homes that aren't on the market due to interest rates these sellers are sitting on. I think that's going to change in time, though, when people, like we talked about a little earlier, are going to realize, listen, if you want to move, I get it if you're sitting on a 3 or 4% interest rate, but these rates are where they're at. And even if even if the Fed drops the rate 3 times, 2 or 3 times over the course of the next however many months this has left in this year, um, that doesn't necessarily mean mortgage rates are going to drop on the same level. Am I right?
Well, yes, we spent a lot of time on that. I actually want to talk about two things that we talked about last week. I want to bring you in on. The first one was exactly that, Larry. I don't think that, given what the Fed discussed, right? Hey, we're going to be data dependent. If the Fed politically feels like they've got to drop some rate cuts into the economy before the economy is ready for rate cuts, right? We don't have a slowing economy. We don't have slowing inflation. We don't see enough, but they're like, it's probably coming and we want to get out of the way before the election. And they start cutting so that they can kind of in June, so they can be done by September and away from the election and quote unquote non-political, air quotes for those of you on the radio. So that's a non-political decision. If they cut too early by any sort of metric, the bond market will absolutely punish mortgage rates. And so we'd have the situation where the Fed will cut the rate that they're in charge of and mortgage rates will go up because the Fed will be perceived to be behind the curve of inflation. And that's a negative for the economy. So we really don't want rate cuts until we see slowing inflation, which is probably affiliated with a slowing economy, which is unfortunate. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence out there that says, maybe that's a thing. But every time we see statistics we have more jobs and inflation that's stickier and higher for longer. So I just don't know. I just don't know enough. I don't think the Fed knows enough that we can have a rate situation that is part of the conversation or in the mix for a recipe for dropping rates. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I don't see any big, massive, or interest rate drops as far as the mortgage products are concerned over the next few years. Hey, let's do this. Let's take another real quick break, and we'll be back and wrap this up.
He caught us by surprise with the second break.
At least it was in 1 minute into a show.
Yeah, well, at least there's that.
Can't keep me on like that.
Hey, it's
All
Dylan
right.
Kramer, and I am here with Larry Shakman, the real estate therapist. We're on the Real Estate Radio Show podcast. Welcome back. Larry, I got a scenario to run past you. I talked a little bit about it last week, and what I think sometimes people who are reluctant to get involved in real estate are like, hey, I'm not an investor, or we talk about real estate's value as an investment from the chair of being an investor. But I want to spend some of the rest of our time together, if not all of it, we could do that, on the following topic. I was working with a client who, in essence, doesn't own a rental property and is buying at age roughly 60. She's just before 60, a condo with a 15-year loan that she plans to pay off in 5. And that loan's going to be a $200,000 loan, but it is an $875,000 condo, almost a $900,000 condo. It's a great place.
Okay.
Cool space, nice pictures, et cetera, et cetera. But here's how this happened. And I want to visit with you about the conversation and the argument for investing in real estate as your primary residence. So long story short, she became a client of mine after she got divorced maybe 10 years ago. And she took the equity from the family home, which wasn't a ton, but was enough, and bought a property in the northern suburbs. And because the school district up there was important to her kids, who were teenagers at that time, she was willing to pay the high property taxes and had a payment of about $5,000 a month in taxes and loan payment, and was living in a house that was about $600,000. Sold that house for about $800,000 and moved to another house for $1 million about 3 years ago. That $1 million house is now under contract today for $1.3 million. Again, about a $5,000 a month payment. And she's able to turn around and exit that and buy this absolutely stunning property that is smaller, but not dramatically cheaper, right? I mean, it's $400,000 cheaper.
And she's putting 600,000+ down on it, right?
Significantly more affordable, but for $900,000, you get a lot of condo, right? And so she's now exiting kind of the active real estate situation, but able to take $700,000 in equity and take a small $200,000 mortgage and put herself in a position that by the time she's 65, she's got a paid off house free and clear. And that's it. Like, that's been her real estate experience. So she's in essence creating, right? If you argue, even if this house is no more valuable 5 years from now, if she's got a $900,000 asset free and clear, then she's won the real estate game as an investor, but she's only ever owned the house she lives in. And so I'd like your comment on, if you're a renter, don't you think targeting this sort of growth over time would be a healthy thing for real estate investment? Just owning your own house for the next couple of decades?
Listen, that's a no-brainer, because I'm not going to beat an old horse to death here. But like you always say, and like we always say, you're paying somebody's mortgage. It may as well be your own. And particularly if you're a first-time home buyer, I'll tell you what, that buying a 3 or 4 flat and renting out 3 of them and living in one pretty much for free based on the other rents you're getting, that's, that's the way to go. I wish I would have went that way in my early 20s. But there's no looking back, right? The clock
Well,
keeps ticking.
you're exactly right. Remember that commercial? God, I don't even remember what it was for. And the guy was like, "It's the biggest no-brainer on the history of Earth."
Yeah, right.
I think that's really what we're talking about here. I think, look, at the end of the day, if you're, it goes back to if you're renting, but this is such a great example. And I'd like to get a little more permission. I might actually reach out for this client and get a little more permission to share details of her story, because I think that it makes a lot of sense in terms of making the case for real estate. Even if you're not an investor, you don't have to be the guy or the gal who gets 20 doors managing. You don't have to have tenants. You could just own your real estate, pay the
Right.
mortgage down. Don't take home equity lines to pay for crap, right? And in essence, consumption over the years. Roll your equity from property to property as you move forward. And you could find yourself literally, as this woman is, practically a real estate millionaire. And it happened over the course, really, since her divorce, in about 10 years.
And that's how it happens. Hey, before we wrap up, I think I want to give everybody a little something that they can kind of take away in terms of the current market we're in and where it might be going. So if you're a buyer out there right now, you have to know that there's no messing around. If you find a house you like, you're not going to have a lot of time to sit and think about it, because there's going to be other buyers coming in with contracts while you're thinking about it. If you're a seller out there, and you're sitting on a 4 or 5% mortgage and your life is telling you have to move, and Dylan can show you this, there are ways to wrap other debt into the purchase and possibly actually bring your monthly payments down. So
right, your total monthly commitment to all your obligations. Let's be very clear about that. But there's really some things that can win there.
The market is still extremely active. And so if you're a buyer out there, you need to be aggressive. And if you're a seller out there, get with an agent you know, like, and trust, so that they can point you in the right direction as far as price is concerned. And with all that said, Dylan, you got anything else you want to wrap up with?
The only thing I would throw out there for you, Larry, is if only there was a book I could get my hands on that would tell me all these things.
Oh my God, what happened? I did not do that. No, listen, you guys, if you're interested in a free ebook that's going to point you in the right direction, all things real estate, I recently published a book called The Top 10s of Real Estate, and it's 32 proven top 10 real estate lists that will help you maximize your profit when you're selling, buying, or investing. And remember, you make money on the buy, not when you sell. So a lot of nuances to that. So if you guys want the book, just text the word book with your email address to 630-921-0611. 630-921-0611. Text the word book in your email address and we'll get you a copy of it for free. Free isn't bad.
Free's fantastic. Larry, thanks for sharing today. It's always a pleasure to be with you on the Real Estate Radio Show podcast. Thanks to everybody who tuned in on the radio. Thanks to everybody who tuned in online. We look forward to visiting with you again on June 1st here on WCPT.
We will be back June 1st.
And online as Larry goes through his recovery and better health.
I'm pretty much back, but I want to be cautious about this. All right, everybody, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Saturday on the Real Estate Radio Show podcast.